Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you. Third Canto, Part 1. Text 21, is it? Text 21. Yesterday we covered 19, right? Traversing the earth, he simply performed the duties. Oh, I see. The page number, text 21 was at the top, next to text 20. Itam vrajan barantam eva varsham kalena yavat gatavan prabhasam tavakchasyasakchitim ekachakram ekatapataram panchitena partha itam vrajan bharvatam eva varsham kalena yavat gatavan prabhasam tavakchasyasarchitim ekachakram ekatapadam ajitena partha
Stambhajam Bharatam Eva Varsham Kalena Yavad Gatavan Prabhasam Tavachashasha Shitim Ekachakram Ekatapatram Ajitena Partha
Tavachasyasakshitameka chakram ekatapatram achitena partha
Idhang vrajan bharatam eva varsham kalena yavar gatavam prabhasam tavachashasa kshitim ekra chakram एकातपत्राम् अजितेन भारत
Ekadapadram Ejitena Parta
Itam Vrajan Bharatam Eva Varsham
Amritan Bharatam Eva Varsham
Kalena Yavad Gatavan Prabhashatsam
Kalena Yavakatavan Prasam
Tavak Chashasa Chitimika Chakram
Avashashashashtitimeta Chakram
Ekapataram Ajitina Partaha
Ekadapadram
Bharatam eva varsham
Itamrajan Bhartam Eva Varsham
kalena ya Bharatam ejitena bhartaha. It's losing connection.
Parta
Itam vrajam bharatam eva varsham
Itamrajan Bhartam Eva Varsham
kalena yavat gatavan prabhasam
Kalena Yavat
tavak chakshasakshitam eva chakram
Avachashashtitimeta Chakram
ekatapatam jitena partah
Ekadapadram
Itam Vrajan Bharatameva Varsham
Itam Brajan Bharatameva Varsham
Kalena Yavad Gatavan Prabhasam
Kalena Yavagatavan Prabhasham
Tavat Shashakshitimeka Chakram
Tavachashashtitimeka Chakram
Ekatapatram Ajitina Partha
Ekadapadam Ajitena Padava Shishigornitai Ki Jai. Itam, like this, Rajan, while traveling, Bharatam, India, Eva, only, Varsham, in the tract of land, Kalena, in due course of time, Yavat, when, Gatavan, visited, Prabhasham, the Prabhasha pilgrimage site, Tavat, at that time, Shashasha, ruled, Shitim, the world, Ekachakram, by the military force, Eka, one, Atapdam, flag, Ajitena, by the mercy of the unconquerable Krishna, Partanaha, Maharaj Yudhishthir. Translation. Thus, when he was in the land of Bharatvarsh, traveling to all the places of pilgrimage, he visited Baba Shekja. At that time, Maharaj Yudhishthir was the emperor and held the world under one military strength and one flag. Report given by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. More than 5,000 years ago, while Saint Vidura was traveling the earth as a pilgrim, India was known as Bharatvarsh. as it is known even today. The history of the world cannot give any systematic account for more than 3,000 years into the past. But before that, the whole world was under the flag and military strength of Maharaj Yudhishthira, who was the emperor of the world. At present, there are hundreds and thousands of flags flapping in the United Nations. But during the time of Vidura, there was, by the grace of Ajit, Lord Krishna, only one flag. The nations of the world are very eager to have one state under one flag. But for this, they must seek the favor of Lord Krishna, who alone can help us become one worldwide nation. Danavir Maharaj, we would love to hear your thoughts on Srimad Bhagavatam.
The idea of having one nation, one flag, as unity is desirable. It's like we have the United Nations, League of Nations and things like that. These are attempts to bring unity in the world, but that means there has to be one center. Ishavashamidam sarvam yat kincha jagat yam jagat tena chaktena bhunjita magata akashas siddhanam. Isha Upanishad says that if Krishna, God, is in the center, then you can have unity, because everyone will revolve around that center. And the perfect government is the government of the Lord. It's like in the spiritual world, the government is also government, but it's all perfect, because there everyone is agreeable to do things the way Krishna wants. But in the material world, everyone has a different idea. I have my own way I want to do things, and I can't do it any other way. So then we have our own. It's like sometimes one country breaks down and starts having some splits. I know, for example, Yugoslavia used to be one country. Now it's not even the name Yugoslavia. All those countries have broken into several, I think it's about 8 or 9 different countries now. And they keep breaking again because one group doesn't want to go along with the ideas of another group. And one group wants to exploit the resources of another. So they're always breaking down. And the flags are increasing. And the flags increasing is not a good sign, because it means they're not getting along. It's like the United States. The government of the United States would be very upset if one state wanted to separate. Sometimes Texas is known for sometimes saying the Lone Star State, and they hint they wouldn't mind having their own nation, but generally they don't want that, because it would weaken the United Nations. It wouldn't be united, and then each one can be easily divided and smashed. Prabhupada tells a story about gives an example of how we can stay together in devotional service, how we can become strong. If one has a bundle of sticks tied up, he can't break them. But if you take one apart, take one, you can break each one easily. So that works for association. If the devotees stay united and they're all serving together, then they can be very strong and no one can break them. That's why we have these centers. These are centers so that those who are very serious about attaining spiritual perfection can have the opportunity to do so in an environment that's conducive for Krishna consciousness. And then the environment, conducive environment, means Krishna, his word is taken as final. There's no debate. And that's difficult to accept because we always think that no one is perfect. And we see when we have different presidents and prime ministers, we see so many mistakes and questionable ideas because they don't have perfect knowledge. But God has perfect knowledge. He's the perfect person. He cares about everyone. He knows what should be done in every circumstance. So if we have that faith in God, now everyone's lost the faith practically. They used to have some more faith. But now faith in God is on the wane, and we have faith in science. Science is the thing that's going to save us now, we think. We're putting our faith in that. So much so that we spend millions and billions and trillions of dollars for trying to go to these different planets and learn what we think that by learning what's there and having some artifacts from there, we'll be able to conquer all the problems of life through science. Through genetic engineering, we're hoping that we'll be able to make people better, live longer, be stronger, and different things. But as long as we have the separate mentality, we don't want to be we don't want to be agreeable with Krishna, then we have to take birth, death, old age, and disease. That's what one gets when he wants to be not under Krishna. Someone may accuse him, why does he do that? Why doesn't he give equal rights to even those who don't want to? Well, he does give equal rights. They have their freedom. They can choose to follow whoever they wish, capitalism or communism or whatever ism. But they have to take the consequences because the material world is not under the protection of Krishna. And therefore, in the material world, there will be all kinds of sinful activities going on, and the sinful activities bring sinful reactions, such as hurricanes and wars and pestilence and diseases and on. These things we don't see them in the spiritual world. Or when the leadership of the world, this material world, is governed according to Krishna's laws, Manu Samhita and the Dharma Shastras, then they don't have practically any suffering either. When Yudhishthira Maharaj was ruling, the earth was made muddy because of the milk flowing from the udder bags of the cows. They were so happy and they were so well taken care of. The milk was coming out. And that's a good sign. When cows are protected and grains are stored up, that's real wealth. Because if you have grains and you have cows, and that means you have milk and all the milk products, You have so many grains, so many nice foodstuffs. This is a sign of good government. But when there's droughts and when there's floods and so many irregularities, that means the leadership, the guidance is not going smoothly. They're not following God's laws, and therefore they'll have to suffer. They say, why would God impose such severe punishments on his people if he was actually all good? He doesn't impose the horrible states of affairs, tsunamis and these things. He doesn't do that out of spite. But he tells us that if you don't follow my instructions, you'll have a horrible time. That's just the way it is. And if you don't believe it, then try it. And then we blame God. He should be all merciful. He shouldn't make us suffer. But if someone acts against the law and imposes suffering on others, shouldn't there be some punishment? Shouldn't there be some rectification so that persons will not do it in the future? They'll see that if you disobey the laws of the state, then you're punished severely. That's a good thing. That's needed. It's needed because you're dealing with people that are not sensible. They're not intelligent. They don't think logically. So you have to use some force. But that doesn't prove that God is cruel. It proves how kind He is, because 3/4 of the manifested world is in the spiritual world. And that means 3/4 of the living beings are there. And they're living quite happily, without any problems. So the people of this world need to know that there is another world where there is no suffering. So if you want a world without suffering, you can get it. But the price is you have to go along with Krishna. That's not such a bad thing. Krishna is a very good leader, very dynamic. He's always young. He never gets old. Unfortunately, our leaders do get old. And they may be senile even, they may become. And they try to rule things. And it's not very comfortable. We wonder how much that leader can protect us. But Krishna, when you're in the army of Krishna, you don't have to worry about being killed or hurt. We see that when Krishna fought against different opponents, whether he had an army or not, it didn't really matter. He was going to win. But when he had an army, then they didn't even get a scratch on them. And if he fought alone, then also he was victorious. That's God. He's greater than everyone.
Thank you very much, Danavar Maharaj, for your thoughts on the science of God. So I'll reread this verse we're studying today. Thus, when he was in the land of Bharatvarsh, traveling to all the places of pilgrimage, he visited Prabha Kshetra. At that time, Maharaj Yudhishthira was the emperor and held the world under one military strength and one flag. So yeah, when some people in this room joined the movement, it was a little different. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. It was a little different. It was more based in the centers, in the temple living. And now the international society has more or less shifted to a more home-based society, and the devotees, they're still bringing Krishna at the center of their home. in many various different ways, and this is the this is the this is the science. We have to keep Krishna at the center of all of our activities. So one fortunate enough to be staying in a temple now is a little more sheltered and protected from the age of Kali Yuga, whereas the devotees who may have some desires to live separately from the temple and have their own temple, um, you know, there may be a bit more of an influence of Kali Yuga having to go out and work in the world and deal with more materialistic seeming things. But if you keep Krishna at the center, then Kali does not have the influence so much. So this is the process they're teaching, and I see sometimes Jayapataka Maharaj, he zooms his disciples and he has big disciple conference calls and he has them show their altar to him and he encourages them in that way. So we're doing the same thing, whether we're householder or grihasta. It just may look a little different. We're just trying to center our lives around Krishna. And a very nice way to do that, Prabhupada gave us these nice Bhagavatam classes to attend to every morning. And in this topic we're covering today, it's taking place in the palace in Hastinapur. And Vidura, he's been invited to give some advice. And Vidura, he's actually the younger brother of Dhritarashtra. There's three brothers. There's Dhritarashtra, Vidura, and Pandu. Vidura being the youngest, and Pandu being the middle, Dhritarashtra being the oldest. And Vidura, he's actually Yamaraj. He's actually the god of death. So there's a past time where he was cursed actually to come and take birth here. But the curse, it acted as a curse, and both a curse and a blessing, because it was a curse in the way where he was born into a family where his mother was of a Shudra caste, and his other two brothers were royal caste, the mother and the father. So even though they were brothers, he may not have felt like an equal in regards to his other brothers. But we see that Krishna, he explains in Bhagavad Gita that Chatur Vidya Bhajante Man Guna Karma Vibhagasa, that the quality of a person is not according to his birth, but it's according to his quality. Sorry, let me repeat that. Yeah, the caste of a person is according not to his birth, his janma, but to his karma and to his quality. So these centers are meant for developing the qualities of a brahmana, and they're meant for people who wish to develop those qualities and further wish to put Krishna at the center of everything they do and actually become Vaishnavas one day. So some people, they do not always like to hear the truth. And this was actually the case of what's going on in this instance. Vidura, he was being called to actually give advice. And like I said, he's not actually a brahmana by birth, but he was also regarded as a very saintly person. So he was, by quality, he was considered amongst the community to be a brahmana and sufficient to be able to give advice to the kingdom. So sometimes he would be called into the palace to give some advice, and there's some interesting situations where sometimes his advice will be taken and sometimes it won't be taken, and even though he's of a very saintly quality and caliber. And that's a difficult situation that we have to often deal with in this material world, is we might look to Shastra for some proof of something, and we might ask senior devotees about it, and we might speak in relation to this and give advice in relation to this, but our consideration will still not be taken into account. This is a bit of spiritual frustration. One time I asked about frustration on a very thinking of from a material point of view, and Maharaj, he commented that frustration, it doesn't have so much of a place, in spiritual life. Qualities are there sometimes in spiritual life, but that instruction has really, really helped me along the journey. Frustration, it's usually coming from having a material mind point, not seeing the situation in relation to Krishna and what actually is he trying to teach me in this situation. So he was giving some advice, Vidura, to the community, and sometimes that advice is honored and sometimes not, even though it might be according to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, the advice that a saintly person gives. But due to the influence of Kali Yuga, everyone is under illusion, and people are very adept for quarrel and hypocrisy and listening more to their mind than Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So sometimes those considerations are not taken. Of course, sometimes it has to do with the time, place, and circumstance as well, that those things will not be taken. So I have not been to this holy place, Prabhakshetra. Is there anyone here that has? Maharaj maybe has. I know it's a very common tirtha. I remember hearing that the Lord, he also pilgrimed there. Nityananda Prabhu visited there, I remember hearing. So that's a tirtha that's always, there for pilgrimage to visit the Holy Land. So these pilgrimage sites, they're very essential. They can really help us to develop our transcendental senses more by visiting them. But before we visit, we must have education so we actually can perceive it correctly. We must cultivate the consciousness of Vrindavan first. Sometimes Krishna arranges for the person to go and experience these holy places first before they have cultivated Vrindavan consciousness, and they become bewildered and they make offenses. And then it might take them a very long time to be able to return to these holy dhams because of the offenses. So generally, from my personal experience, I've seen that it's much better to get the education first before going, and cultivate Vrindavan consciousness first, and then go and visit the holy places, and then they will be able to show you so much. But if we do not cultivate Vrindavan consciousness first, then our consciousness will be polluted by the material modes and material nature, and then we will not be able to properly perceive the Dham. We will make offenses. So this is another reason why these centers are in place, so we can actually cultivate Vrindavan consciousness without actually having to go to India. And then once that is properly cultivated, it's then safe, to take pilgrimage like our acharyas, with the guidance of your spiritual master and your teachers before you. So Prabhupada, he makes a very nice point that also my Guru Maharaj taught me. Specifically in a situation, there's a verse Srila Prabhupada, he talks about if one is to speak the truth, he should do it palatably. And Satyam Bhuyat, Priyam Bhuyat, this verse. And there's an explanation of this where you Prabhus remember hearing about Srimati Morarji in the Lilamrita in the morning. We've been recently hearing about her and her helping Srila Prabhupada. And I was thinking when we were hearing about her a few weeks ago that she was always saying Bala Krishna, right? And how she worships God in the form of a baby. And this is very popular in like Gujarat and Bombay. A lot of the devotees there, they worship God in the form of a baby. And this is actually the founder Acharya who is initiating this, and mainly was a great friend of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his name was Vallabhacharya, and he founded the Pushti Marg, which is also a very bona fide sampradaya of the Vaishnavas, and they primarily, a lot of them are cultivating that mood. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas also cultivate that mood, but Srila Prabhupada makes the point in some purports that some other forms of worship maybe are more common for our line of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, although we don't exclude that mode of worship. So he made the point to her to describe this Satyam Bhuyat Priyam Bhuyat. He made a point because she was becoming upset. Somebody in Pushti Margs, one of her associates, presented a Back to Godhead magazine to her after some time, after Prabhupada had made some disciples, and there was an article written by some disciples in there describing the instance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Vallabhacharya, where he was talking about the commentary that Vallabhacharya had written on Srimad Bhagavatam. Vallabhacharya was saying that mine is superior to Sridhar Swami's, who's the Gaudiya Vaishnava authority on Srimad Bhagavatam. So the students, because they didn't understand the rasa of the situation, they actually presented it in a way in the article that made it sound like Lord Chaitanya was insulting Vallabhacharya, when in fact they were very great friends. And they were in a friendship rasa. It wasn't that he was like insulting him when he was saying, you can't take your commentary to be superior to the authority, but he was kind of playfully joking with him. And in that way he instructed him that you cannot wish to surpass your spiritual master. If one tries to do this, he is considered a prostitute. And he gave the example because the word Swami, it also means husband. So a wife who tries to surpass her husband or surpass the Swami is considered a prostitute. This is not the appropriate mood of a wife in relation to her husband. She should consider her husband as her authority, and as a servant she shouldn't try to surpass him. So like that, Lord Chaitanya gently explained to Vallabhacharya that we shouldn't consider ourselves superior to our spiritual master. So in this way, Srimati Morarji, Srila Prabhupada explained it to her and actually pacified her by explaining it in this way, And this is a nice example of Satyam Bhuyat, Priyam Bhuyat, because actually if we're not so spiritually advanced where we're understanding rasa at all, or anything like the different bhavas that go on in spiritual exchanges, if we're just kind of going about in these spiritual exchanges in a bit more of a gross way, sometimes we'll make offenses, and then it will let Kali creep in, and Kali will creep in very easily this day and age. She creeps in when there's any arguing or whenever there's any tension. If anyone creates any disturbance in somebody else just by like communicating with them, this is because they're influenced by the age of Kali. There's no disturbance in the spiritual atmosphere amongst spiritual personalities in communication because they're not influenced by the age of Kali. So the qualities of age of Kali are given in Srimad Bhagavatam. We can look more into that. They're in line with the qualities of the mode of ignorance and passion heavily. So when an environment is heavily influenced by the qualities of ignorance and passion, the person is not actually able to perceive things how they are, and he just perceives from his concocted reality that he has formed in his head. And this is a very dangerous position. And it's said even that it is more dangerous to have half knowledge than full knowledge. So somebody who may have some knowledge of spiritual life, but they are very influenced by the mode of ignorance and passion, this is a more dangerous position than somebody who is not influenced or does not have spiritual knowledge and is influenced by these lower modes, ignorance and passion. Because they say ignorance is bliss, right? So the person in ignorance, he's not going around actually trying to instruct people in an ignorant way, because he doesn't think he knows. When somebody is still influenced by the lower modes and they start to learn goodness, they start to think that they know. But the problem is they're still influenced by these lower modes and they only have half knowledge. So it becomes a very dangerous position. So we have to learn to cultivate a quality of hearing in which where we're able to actually perceive these things, how things are being presented amongst the community, so things can be presented in a favorable way for all of Krishna's bhaktas to grow together. Or else it will be very difficult to carry out Harinam Sankirtan Yagya, because with Kali very much pervading, and if people are influenced by the lower modes, it just becomes a lot of, very much trouble in the endeavor. So in order to cultivate our hearing properly, we need to make sure that we're hearing from saintly people. Usually a nice trusted source is trusting that the people who are sannyasis in ISKCON, and checking and seeing the background, because these are people who are considered the greatest, the highest order in the society, the topmost spiritual society in the world. And if they're accredited by so many Vaishnavas to have their acclaimed post, and we hear from them nicely, then we will too learn how to present this Krishna consciousness philosophy nicely. And if we can present this Krishna consciousness philosophy nicely, then Krishna becomes so pleased. We don't have to take into consideration any material obligations if Krishna becomes this pleased with his devotee, because he takes care of all of it, especially one who teaches others this science. It is a very difficult and delicate process of learning how to distribute the science of Krishna consciousness properly without making offenses. So the more that we can hear from the qualified people, and not only hear their words, but hear their actions. It is said that a saintly person, he hears by his ears. So we can cultivate this. And Brahmachari, he practices the sacrifice that he puts into the fire of yajna is the hearing process. For the grihastha, the sacrifice that he's putting in the fire of yajna is the charity process, dana. And this way, they both become purified very quickly. It's understood before one takes the grihastha, he takes the brahmachari. Somebody has not sacrificed their hearing process yet, and they just go to sacrifice charity, it'll be very difficult for them to actually sacrifice charity in the proper consciousness. If one has not sacrificed his hearing into the fire of yajna yet, then his consciousness is not yet spiritualized, and he still has a way to go. We always have a way to go. It's never that there's ever a time where we're at the end goal. But the process is first sacrifice your hearing process, and then you can actually learn. So we sacrifice our hearing process in order to how to learn music to play for Krishna. You know, we have to hear it first to be able to actually perceive how to do it. You know, if we just try right away to do it, we won't be able to do properly. We sacrifice our hearing, you know, in the classes and to our God brothers and God sisters and inquiring submissively. We sacrifice the hearing process. We have these nice headphones that are always available, so whenever we're doing service for Shri Gauranatai, we can constantly be hearing holy books and the lives of the saintly people. And in this way, when somebody has sacrificed his hearing sufficiently, then he can remember Krishna, you know. Saintly people, they may not need to externally chant all the time because they're already remembering Krishna. You see, we use it as a vehicle to remember Krishna, but if you're already remembering Krishna, you know. So first we have to hear so we can remember Krishna. And then once we've heard, then we've actually cultivated the consciousness to where we can work for Krishna and then give what we're working for to Krishna. You know, and this is the Grihastha ashram, and due to different desires of the living entities, some take to the Grihastha ashram, some choose to remain brahmachari, some who take to the Grihastha ashram, it is said at the age of 50 they should split ways and they should part. So the Grihastha ashram, it's about cultivating a mood of helping the two souls come to Krishna. And they should be doing in a mood of detachment from each other and know that there's eventually we will split and return back to maybe the temples, or traditionally vanaprasthas live in the forest. So it's a little bit of a mood, an internal shift that takes place where they don't focus on so much the material anymore, just very focused on the spiritual. And that may externally look like different things. We talked about avadut yesterday. Sometimes when devotees take to this vanapras, it might externally be perceived like that. They might maybe become a little more lenient in some of the strict regulations that they've been keeping for 50 years, you know, because they're already trained to do that. And the inside, they're already purified, you know, so sometimes it might look like that. Sometimes it might look like different austerities that the devotee chooses to perform after having performed many years of devotional service. He knows he's in a safe place to do so, and cultivating, finding a right atmosphere that's congenial to his spiritual growth, and being able to plug into a community where at whatever stage of the journey he's at, he can, you know, make the most advancement and he has people there who he trusts that can guide him if he has any questions on his advancement. And then there's also the sannyasa ashram, which is further than that one. This is the highest order of the renounced life. The other three, aside from grihastha, is in the renounced order. And grihastha, it is also in the renounced order, but they are renouncing the fruits of their labor rather than renouncing the material opulences. And it's clarified in Srimad Bhagavatam that somebody who develops the consciousness of a sannyasi, he no longer behaves for himself at all. He's only carrying out his activities to help the devotees around him. And this is a very high level, so therefore somebody who has developed this consciousness, he's only accepting what is favorable for devotional service, and he's rejecting what's not favorable. So sometimes the sannyasi may eat very opulently, and he may have to do that a lot because he may be meeting a lot of guests, and it may take a toll on his body, but he's not in the bodily consciousness anymore for that to disturb him. He's only doing every single action as a service to the devotees around them to help, get closer to Krishna. Yeah. So somebody in this consciousness is very advanced. They're able to see that what the goal of life is, and they're very convinced of this matter. And they can help others too. They can help to convince others because they have that firm conviction. They've actually realized the knowledge and been able to apply what they've been taught in their life so they can teach others. You can't really teach if you can't practice, yourself. If you haven't been able to apply it yourself, it's pretty difficult to teach somebody else, unless that person is, in a level which they're very innocent and have very little knowledge on the subject matter. So let us continue to hear very attentively to our predecessor acharyas, so we can too learn how to present this Krishna consciousness properly. And thank you for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam.